Next, we're looking at example 3. Example 3 says, for the following equation written in slope-intercept form, what is the slope and the y-intercept of the line? The equation they give us is y equals negative 3/4 x minus 1. Remember, normally slope-intercept form is in the form of y equals mx plus b. Reminding you that m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So in our problem, the number written in front of x that's being multiplied, or the coefficient of x, is negative 3/4. So our slope, or our value of m, is negative 3/4. Our y-intercept, or the number being added or subtracted on the end of this equation, is negative 1. So that's where we cross the y-axis. All right, next let's go through example 4. Write the following equation in slope-intercept form and state the slope and the y-intercept of the line. This is just like example 2, so it'd be a good idea to pause the video right now, write down the problem 7x minus 3y equals 21, and see if you can convert this into slope-intercept form on your own. Alright, so when we're dealing with a problem like this, the goal is always to get the y variable by itself. So we currently need to get rid of the x term with this 7x. It's positive, so the opposite of something that's positive, and the way we bring it over to the other side of the equal sign, is subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 7x over. That's going to leave me with the minus 3y equals 21 minus 7. I'm sorry, we can't subtract the 21 and the 7 because they're not like terms. So it'd be minus 7x and then plus 21. I always get in the habit of writing the x term first. But if you look at your textbook, they didn't initially do it that way. They said 21 minus 7x, but the way I have it written is the exact same. Next, we have negative 3 that's being multiplied by the y, and again, the goal is to get y by itself. The inverse or opposite of multiplication is division, so we need to divide everything by negative 3. Well, negative 7 divided by negative 3 doesn't divide nicely for us, so we can just leave it as the fraction 7/3. And it's now positive because it was a negative 7 and a negative 3. And then the x variable carries down. The positive 21 divided by negative 3 is negative 7. So we get y equals 7/3 x minus 7. From here, identifying our slope, again remembering slope is the number being multiplied in front of x. And in our case, that's 7/3. Y-intercept is the number being added or subtracted on the end, and in our case, that's negative 7. All right, let's finish this off with the very last example, example 5. So example 5 says, write the following equation in slope-intercept form and state the slope and y-intercept of the line. So just like the problem above, we're given 5x plus y equals negative 10. Again, the goal is to get y by itself, so we need to get rid of any of the terms that are being added or subtracted to it. We have a positive 5x here, so to get rid of it would be to subtract it over to the left side or right side of the equal sign. That leaves me with y equals negative 5x minus 10. Now the x term was negative, so that's why it's a negative 5x. That 10 originally was a negative 10, but when I write those in line with one another, again that negative sign turns into a subtraction sign. So negative 5x minus 10. Now in the last example, we had to divide by the number in front of y, but right now we don't have a number written, and that's because it's 1. And so we can leave it as is, and this is in slope-intercept form. We can then identify our slope, the number being multiplied in front of the x term, which is negative 5, and the y-intercept, which is the number being added or subtracted on the end, in our case, negative 10. And that wraps up the Concept 6 lesson. At this point, I would work on some of the review problems, check your answers, and then get started on the homework assignment. And please let me know if you have any questions.